because I'm on the host side.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
So we actually got some rain on Monday too, Veronica. We really need it in here in California.
It was wonderful. It was really great.
The fires are all done.
Yeah. It was huge.
Yeah.
The fires are all done out there, right?
There's not as many, not that I know of. It's mostly burn scars.
And the rain really made a difference, I read.
That's good.
Yeah. Welcome everyone. We're not talking about global catastrophe, or we won't be for long.
We'll just wait for some more people to come in.
Yeah. Excellent.
Has anyone done anything fall recently?
Ooh,
Pumpkin patches.
We just got pumpkins to carve. I think that's waiting for me when I get home.
Ooh.
Oh, that'll be great.
Last week at Trader Joe's, they picked out some fun pumpkins, just to have like on the tables, and then on our front stoop, lots of gourds and very, very cool colors and whatnot. But I think we got the carving pumpkins today.
Perfect.
That's very
That'll
exciting.
be fun.
Do
you do freehand carving, or do you use a template?
That's a great question. I do not remember. I think we did freehand last year. We used to have templates when I was growing up, but I don't remember what we did last year. If we didn't buy templates, then I'm pretty sure that we just did freehand carving.
Yeah.
It's kind of, since our oldest is 4, there's a lot of, hey, let's kind of do this together, but mostly mom and dad are going to do it.
Yes, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, fun. A lot of people did local farms with fall fun, corn.
Nice.
Orchard.
Yeah, just noticing.
Oh, a corn maze. I have not done a corn maze in a long time.
I just did one a couple weekends ago in Milwaukee, and it was great. But the funny thing was, we had a map. We had a map, and it was more of a game. You had to get to certain checkpoints, and each checkpoint you had to find them, and you had to write down a number, and you could enter your map in at the end if it had all the numbers, and you could potentially win something. I don't know what. I think it was donuts or something.
Did you?
We got all of them.
Nice.
So
good for you, Veronica.
Crossing my fingers.
Edie got lost.
Pumpkin donuts.
I don't blame you. I can see it with kids. As a young man, I would have loved to just sprint through and see how fast I could do it. Now with kids, I think I would be a little bit more hesitant. I could just imagine a meltdown happening, and then saying, well, tripping. We need to get out. Diaper explosion.
Oh boy. Directionally challenged.
Yeah, so Clarence says she was trying to grow pumpkins, but they didn't grow into fruit.
Oh, interesting.
Did you try giving them milk? Because I've heard that giving pumpkins milk is really good for them.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no idea if that's true, but
yeah,
I read it.
I remember that as well, because we used to grow some growing up, and I don't remember if it made a difference. We got pumpkins, which was fun.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's fun, Amanda.
Wow. Yeah.
Good for him.
All right. Should we?
Wow.
Oh, that's great, Stephanie. Stephanie said that she went to a pumpkin patch for her mom's 86th birthday, and she rode on the sack swing.
Oh my gosh.
Pretty
What's
cool.
A sack swing?
Yeah, I wonder about that too. It sounds exciting. Anything at 86 is exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Or everything is exciting.
Oh, and I should say that my parents' 71st anniversary is today. They were married 71 years ago today. We went out to lunch together.
Oh, 71 years. That is
71
amazing.
years.
That is so good.
Yep.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Wow.
I know.
We were fortunate enough to go to the Thomas Aquinas College 50th anniversary gala a couple weekends ago. And I was thinking about, well, if maybe I could see the 100th anniversary if I live 50 more years. And even if I live 50 more years, I guess I'll be 80. So that'll be fine. But we'll only be at 55 years of marriage. Only 55 years. 71 is spectacular.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. Not many people.
Oh.
Yep.
All right. Well, maybe we should start. We've got a good amount of people.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone. And as we were just talking about fall, we hope you're having a wonderful week and enjoying this fall. It's been beautiful here in Illinois, and in California, it sounds like it's been a little rainy, a little fallish.
Yeah.
Well, we're so thrilled to welcome you today to the newest edition of the Mother of Divine Grace School Light of the Faith series, in which we aim to provide Catholic formation for classical educators. My name is Veronica Jost. I am the Development Officer for MODG, and I am so pleased to be joined by Laura Berquist, who is the feature director of the series and the founder of our school, as you all know, I'm sure. As many of you know, through the Light of the Faith series, we highlight amazing speakers related to our school community who delve into topics that help shed light into the astounding depth of our Catholic faith and how it pertains to our daily lives. We have an incredible list of speakers for this year that we are still in the midst of scheduling, but we can't wait for them to share their wisdom with us. Today is the second episode of our second season of the series, which is a little bit of a tongue twister.
Alliteration, I love it.
Yeah. But we are so honored to be joined by Chris Sebastian as our guest speaker. Now, anyone who has attended a previous Light of the Faith webinar will recognize Chris as our usual host of the program. So we are really delighted to now have him on the other end of the webinar.
It feels a little strange, but I think I'll try to get used to it.
It does feel kind of strange, yeah. Chris is the Director of Advancement for MODG. He is also an alumnus of the school, graduating in 2009, as well as part of the graduating class of 2013 of Thomas Aquinas College. He has taught the Learning Support Literary Analysis class for many years, and having personally overheard him teach every week over the last school year, I can attest to both his enthusiasm and genuine interest in the curriculum and students. In fact, sometimes I've told Chris this many times, I'm a little sad that I never got to have him in high school as a teacher, because his classes always just sound amazing, so much fun, and the kids sound like they have fun too. I've had the great joy to work with Chris, as I just kind of said, so I can tell you that his passion for positive self-improvement is contagious in both the work sphere and in everyday life. He is always implementing new strategies for success in achieving goals, and he really loves sharing and discussing these tools with others. Before we get started, would you lead us in a prayer, Laura?
Yes, I would be delighted to. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Mother of divine grace,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Just before Chris starts, I want to say that I love this talk. So I've heard a version of this talk, which I thought was amazing and truly helpful in virtually every area of your life. And I want to say that I have been watching Chris implement what he is talking about in this talk. So not only is it, I can say to you, not only is it theoretically sound, makes sense, it resonates when you hear it, but it's actually doable. And I know someone who does it right there. So I am very excited to have Chris share this with our community. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Laura. That means a lot.
Yeah, and just before we get started, I want a quick reminder. If you have any questions for Chris, please feel free to submit them via the Q&A pod at the bottom of your screen. We'll get to as many of them as possible at the conclusion of his talk. In addition, if you would like to share your thoughts in the chat box with your fellow participants, make sure to click where it says panelists and change it to the panelists and attendees option. So with that all being said, I'd like to hand it over to Chris.
Now I feel so, it makes me feel so good. You guys said such nice things about me. You guys make me feel happy anyways, but it's nice. That's a really, really touching tribute. So I am really excited to be with you guys here today for this talk. It is something that I am very passionate about in the workplace, in my personal life, and in my faith life, which is part of my personal life. So I hope that we're able to I'm able to share some things that will help you all today, as I know that they have helped me and helped a lot of people that I know. So the title of the talk was Smart Families. We're going to get into what that means as we go forward, but in general, kind of the underlying element of what we're talking about here today. And I hope you all can see my screen. If you can't, holler and I'll change it. But we're talking about measurable goals and how you as families can use these measurable goals to empower yourselves towards growth in so many different areas, whether it be in your faith life, in your family life, in your professional life. This applies to people along a wide variety of avenues of life. So in general, these measurable goals are going to help us fulfill our vocations. And that's kind of a broad term. We think of vocation a lot of the time as something that is related to the priesthood or a religious calling of some sort to an order. And technically that might be the more rigorous, more specific term. I think actually a vocation came from Latin vocare, maybe, of course. And that is a calling, and a calling forth by a bishop for a man in a community to take his vows, to take the vows of being called to the priesthood. But in general, we speak of vocations a lot of the time as something that we are called to in our daily lives. Even here in MODG, I know that many of us, and probably all of us to a person, consider working for the school part of the ministry as our vocation. We really believe in the mission of the school, and it's something that we are called to do. And for all of you as individuals, whether you are parents or children, you have different vocations as student, as son, daughter, brother, sister, friend, follower of God, mother, father, friend. These are things that we are called to, and things that we have an obligation in some way to respond to God's call for. And we're always working towards perfection, right? We're working with what God has given to us to fulfill our vocations. And I like at this point in time to start off with scripture. I want to read the parable of the talents, because it's something that I think helps us get into the proper mindset of why this is so important and what Christ tells us to do with our talents. So this is Matthew 25, starting around verse 14. It's long, so I might be skipping around a little bit, but for it will be as when a man going on a journey called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to their ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went away and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. Now he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you have delivered me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And then the one who was given 2 was given 2. And then the one who had been given 1 came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not winnow. So I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sowed and gather where I have not winnowed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servants into the outer darkness. There men will weep and gnash their teeth. Kind of stark at the end there, right? There they will weep and gnash their teeth. And that's this is a really striking parable, right? Because here we are, and I know that I often have fallen into the mindset of, well, I've only been given one talent. What could be expected? What's the point of doing anything? What is the point of trying? You see, and we see around us, we always comparison shop. We look at the family that is better dressed. It looks like they always have it together in mass. Their kids sit still. Something that we're working on in our family, sitting still during mass. Or you see somebody who is incredibly talented, more successful at their job, more successful as a mother, more successful as a writer, as an author, whatever your calling may be. But here Christ is telling us specifically, I am calling you, whatever I have given to you, I want you to do something with that. He's not expecting the person who he gave one talent to make 5 more. That might happen. That might be something that he ends up being able to do, a rags to riches kind of thing. But the one thing that leads him to be cast out into the outer darkness for the wailing and gnashing of teeth is doing nothing with it. You wicked and lazy and slothful servant. He sits on it and does not do anything with it. And that's what leads to the condemnation. So that's a call to action for us in a lot of ways. Wherever we are, whatever stage in life we are at, whatever we have been given, Christ is calling us to not sit on our hands, to not hide our light under a bushel basket, but to do something. And here, I love this image in the background, this image of the 2 puzzle pieces, because we're talking about bridging a gap. I love puzzles in general. I think my mom is here. We always are doing puzzles, whether it's on vacation or whatnot. And this is kind of beautiful because we're crossing a gap here. This is a bridge. We see in our calling that what Christ has given to us, that there is something very important that we ought to do. And we see that we maybe are not that person yet. So how do we fill in this gap, bridge that gap to actually become the person that God wants us to be? That's what we're going to be talking about here today. So when we're talking about habits, success is a product of daily habits, not a once in a lifetime transformation. I think this is a very comforting, very beautiful way of looking at habits. This is from a book called Atomic Habits that I very much like. You see how you have to work daily. You're putting in the effort day after day after day, and not just looking for that strike of inspiration. Again, strikes of information might happen, but they might lead to nothing but just that one strike, unless you actually implement something that will carry it out. And this can apply to holiness. It can apply to good grades. It can apply to success at your job. What we are working against is the general malaise that comes with humanity. We always have this lazy river, these jets of humanity working against us. Maybe have you all been to a lazy river? I love lazy rivers. It's been a while since I've been to a water park, especially not in the last couple of years. But it's so nice to just go with the flow. Life just kind of carries you forward. And that's because there are jets that are pushing us forward, pushing us in that direction. That makes life easy. It's all about relaxation on vacation. And that is taking us away from greatness, taking us away from actually working on the things that might be hard, might cause you to have to swim upstream. If you've ever, as a kid, I would get out and try to swim upstream if I missed the exit. It's hard to swim against the current. It is really difficult. And that's why setting up habits helps us to continue in that proper direction towards success. Okay, so when you are thinking about your role in the community, when you're thinking about why is this important? Why do I have to develop these habits? Why do I have to try to improve myself? I don't think I have to convince many of you. I might be preaching to the choir because, first of all, you are either attending this live or listening to the recording. So you have that desire, but I'll just want to reinforce it because I think it's important. You in your families as parents are mentors and evangelizers. Your actions affect your children. You are the role models. You are literally how they come to know God. And that is incredibly impactful with regards to why your example, your way of witnessing to God sets the standard for everyone in your household and everyone that you come into contact with. you can actually empower change, not only for yourself, but empower change in your students, in your friends, in your brothers and sisters, and everyone else around you. And here's an example of how we all want to empower change, right? We really want to be the person that can implement these things. But if you're here, and if you're like me, that's a struggle. You might know what you want to do, but how do we actually do it? How are we consistent with accomplishing those goals? And here's an example from the book Atomic Habits that I referred to a little bit ago. So they ran this example. It's an exercise group, and I believe the intention of the exercise was they had a group of people, and they wanted to see how often they would exercise within a required time frame of, say, a month or 2 months. And they had certain benchmarks that they had to reach, and certain amounts of active time and whatnot. So they had 3 groups. So the first group was the control group, and they just said, all right, here's what you have to do. You're supposed to exercise this amount in a week, and these are the goals that you want to hit, and run off. Then they had the motivation group. To this group, they told the same thing as the control group. Here's how much you're supposed to do. And they also gave them information, instructional literature regarding how impactful, how good, how beneficial it was for you to exercise. Things like, well, if you can run for a mile straight, then you are less likely to have a stroke. If you can do 40 consecutive push-ups, you're less likely to have a heart attack, things like that. And then they said, great, tell us how much you report back and tell us how much you do. Then they had the third group. And the third group, they didn't really have a name for it, but I called it the specific group. And they forced them to do something called an implementation intention. So they had to say the time and location in which they were going to do the exercise. So they had to write, during the next week, I will partake in at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on blank day at blank time in blank location. So in general, it's I will behavior at time in location. It's making it be very specific. So you might think, okay, awesome. Report back and tell us how much it works. And at the end of the test, what they found was that of those people within the control group, 35% of them responded that they met the goals for exercise. They met the required benchmarks they were supposed to have. So a little over a third. Of the motivation group, 38% said that they met those benchmarks, which I find to be incredibly shocking, incredibly interesting. Almost negligible difference from the control group, just 3% more. And they were being told why it was good, why it was beneficial. And then the specific group, they reported back how often they did this. And 91% of them hit the benchmarks. 91%. We're looking at double, almost triple of what it was from either of those groups. It makes an incredible difference to have this implementation intention regarding the time and location that you do something. So keep that in mind when you are setting a goal, that if you say, I will exercise, you might find that an entire week goes by without you exercising, even though you know that you really need to, even though you know that if you are overweight, if you are maybe having weak lungs, you're not progressing towards taking care of your body in a certain way. And this has to do with prayer life. If you say, I need to pray more, if you say, I need to do the family rosary, if you're not saying when and where you're going to do it, you're probably not going to actually follow through on that. Keep this in mind as we go forward through this. I love this meme. It's something that I share with the students when I've given this in the past. And I think it actually is really insightful. In general, these aliens, I don't know if many of you have not seen these before, they restate kind of normal things within our lives in very stark, awkward terms so that it becomes very clear what you're actually doing. So the alien on the couch looks super cozy, got some socks on, got a nice cup of something, maybe a hot drink, hot apple cider, chips, looks very relaxed, saying, I am going to become a better being. His friend pretty starkly says, when? The intimation here is there's no plan and seemingly no action being taken here by the alien on the couch. And this person we don't have great confidence that they are going to become a better being, a better person, because there is no when. So now we come to the title of the talk, SMART goals. These SMART goals are going to be how, one tool at least, how you're going to be able to do this. So here, what does SMART mean? It is an acronym, but there's a reason that it was all in caps. And many of you may have heard this before. There are various titles of it, but SMART means these 5 things: specific, measurable, attainable or achievable, realistic or relevant, and time related. So these are the 5 things that we are looking at when you are setting your goals that will help you actually have them be measurable, specific, and actually follow through on the problems that you know that you have to solve. You and I both know that we are not perfect beings. And we know that we have some goals that we need to set out. If we're really wanting to implement them, these are the benchmarks. These are the things that we're going to have to jump through to make sure that this actually happens. So let's talk about it, because those are kind of vague, and it can be overwhelming to say, like, well, what do these frames mean? But specific means when you're setting a goal that you will target a specific area for improvement. Now, maybe that's a little bit redundant, but I think it's relevant. You don't want to just say, I will be holier. Maybe it's even getting a little bit more specific than that. I will improve my prayer life. So that's one aspect of holiness, right? And within your prayer life, think how more specific you could get. I will be better with my daily offering at the beginning of the day. I'll be better with leading a family rosary. I will be better at my novenas. And even there, I'm falling into things. Better, what does better mean? Not quite as specific as we want. Let's keep going though. Measurable. Quantify or at least suggest an indicator of progress. If you are just a Sunday Mass attendee and you want to be able to go to daily Mass a little bit more, or maybe a lot bit more, start off with something that will say, how have I progressed towards becoming a daily communicant or going to Mass at least more times a week? Will I be able to go twice a week? That's a great improvement. You'll know, and you'll be able to quantify how often you go to Mass every single week if you report back to somebody. Attainable and achievable. Specify who will do it. Now, this might seem a little bit obvious, because generally it is I who am the one who will be doing things. But so frequently we might be complaining or setting goals for things that are outside of our control, whether it is something that relates to our spouse or relates to our job, relates to our boss, and we really want to be able to do this, but ultimately we don't have the last say. Ultimately, we don't have the final authority here. So think about, if it's attainable, you should be able to do it yourself. I was thinking about this with relation to students. If you are under somebody else's authority and you make the decision, I will become a daily mass goer. There's other things, unless you're within walking or bike riding distance from your church, you might not be able to do that. You might have to ask permission. There might be reasons why you can't go to daily Mass. It might be really far away. So try to set goals that are within your own reach, within the boundary of what you can control, within your sphere of influence, if you will. Now, realistic or relevant. State what results can realistically be achieved given available resources. So for instance, I might say, well, I want to become a best-selling author. Seeing as I only write emails and messages and text messages to my coworkers, that might be a little bit of a stretch for me. Maybe I could do it if I started neglecting every other element of my life, if I didn't spend that much time with my children, if I didn't spend that much time with my wife, if I didn't spend much time at my job. But that seems pretty unrealistic, right? You don't want to be taking big swings towards these goals. You want it to be something that you actually can achieve realistically. So even to go back to the daily Mass, or even a nightly rosary, you might not be able to get your kids to sit still. So trying to pray a full 5 decades of the rosary or 15 decades of the rosary, or or do things like that might not be realistic for you with everybody. But maybe you can start out with a chaplet. That might be more doable, looking at 5 minutes. We'll talk about this later, but a gateway habit is generally something that is 2 to 5 minutes. And that is something that helps set yourself up for success, and not having it be, well, I'm going to work out for 2 hours every day this entire week. I'm going to go cold turkey on all carbs. If you love carbs, and like me, I love chips, I love pasta. So that might be toning that down a little bit more. But looking at the realisticness of the reality of what you're trying to accomplish. And then lastly, time related. Specify when the results can be achieved. That is also incredibly important. Going back to that little alien cartoon, I'm going to become a better being. When? I am going to be able to run a mile. When? I'm going to run a marathon. When? I am going to be a daily mass goer. When? Set a goal. Might be something far out, might be 2 months, maybe it'll be a month. Maybe you want to try to do it within the next week, but specifying when the results can be achieved will really help you. And in general, what this framework is trying to set up is, how will you know when you have done it? When you set your goal, you want to be able to celebrate at the end of it. You want to be able to maybe crack a bottle of champagne, know that the project has been accomplished. You want to be able to just know that you made measurable steps towards accomplishing the specific, attainable, realistic goals that you set out. You want this to be something that is concrete, that you can be seen. Again, going back to the idea of, I want to be holy. That's great. We do all want to be holy. We want to be saints. Unfortunately, we won't know until the end of our lives if we're saints, and God tells us. So it's not quite concrete, but there are concrete things that we can do so that our holiness shines forth, so we are dedicated to God, so that we are committing to that relationship with our Lord and Savior, such as praying daily in the midst of strife and difficulty in the middle of your day, stopping and saying a Hail Mary, being able to have your family dedicated towards God in a number of ways that are direct and measurable and concrete, that you can see, that you can tell your family, and they will know we are a house that is dedicated to God. So in general, you're wanting to set up systems in addition to goals. I say versus, but maybe in addition is a good thing too. This is something that we look at as an organization. When I am looking at other organizations, looking at our organization, our own department, we want to set up a system so that it's not just relying on the stick-to-itiveness of a single individual to power through, so that you know that if mom or dad isn't there, everything's just going to go crazy. I have an example of this in my own life where I kind of failed for a while, and actually still I'm setting 30-day goals for myself in various elements of life, some professional, some personal, and then some financial or kind of my hobbies related. And when I was doing more fitness related goals, I decided to set a goal of I would run 2 miles in less than 20 minutes. I had already had something to do with a mile, or set up push-ups and whatnot. So I wanted to see how I could run. I had not run in quite some time. So I thought, well, that's a pretty decent goal to have. I'll try to get to that. And it was a very specific goal. 2 miles, 20 minutes, you pretty much know whether or not it's done or not. I went out and I ran, and I beat that goal the first time that I ran, which sounds like a humble brag, but really, if you're a real runner out there, you know that I was setting the bar pretty low for myself. But I still felt pretty good. I thought, awesome, I accomplished it. But then for the rest of those 30 days, unfortunately, I did not run as much as I should have. I thought, well, I accomplished that goal on the first day. So even though I tried to get myself motivated, like, okay, well, now let's see if I can run 2 miles in less than 19 minutes. The spark wasn't there. I kind of knew that I had already done the thing. I knew that I had accomplished it. Had I set a different goal, such as I will run 5 miles a week for these 30 days, then I would have been able to continue doing that and maybe even seen some more improvement. But I set a low bar, jumped over it, and said, I'm good. So that's the kind of the danger of a goal that is maybe too realistic, to go back to the SMART framework. And in addition, the idea of habits really has ingrained and inherent in it the idea of things that you want to do over and over and over again, or that you need to do over and over again. I'm trying to make my office more presentable. I hope it looks nice. I think it looks pretty good. It's getting better, at least. And I was thinking, well, how about I just clean my office and rearrange it and make it better, so that I feel better about the way that it is. And that's a good thing to do. Sometimes there's clutter, and I was able to reorganize things. But what I was coming to the realization of even this week is, I think I just need to set a time to clean my office every week or every other week, to really dedicate it, because that's a system that will ensure that I never get too far down the road where the mess gets to be a lot that I have to dedicate an afternoon to cleaning it. So setting up systems as opposed to setting up goals, and thinking, how will you know when you have accomplished your goal? Never miss twice. This is, I think, a really excellent picture. I'm going to let that sit for a second as I drink some water. That's good. We see that there's a wide range here between the best day possible all the way in the top and a bad day all the way at the bottom. But what's really reassuring in here is that we see how many choices we have within our day that help us get towards a good day or a bad day, help us recover from a bad choice, or keep going down that path. So it's probably very rare that we'll have that truly worst day where we only make bad choices. It's probably also just as rare that we have the truly good day where we only make good choices. So think about every single choice and interaction that you have within the day as an opportunity to readjust, to recover. Don't miss twice. Many books that are written about this, and it's, I think, a super impactful thing for us to think about. How often do we condemn ourselves in waking up on the wrong side of the bed and thinking, oh, it's just going to be a bad day? That applies to holiness, I think, too. If we make a bad choice where we miss a novena prayer one day, it can be really, really easy to beat yourself up and think, well, what's the point? I missed it. I'm not perfect. Jump back up. Make that good choice the next day, or make the good choice later on. If you don't have enough time to do all of your prayers, do some of them. Don't let it slide into the absolute worst bad day. I was thinking about this with relation to my own goals too, and our goal with our kids in mass is to just get them to be good, to be perfectly honest. And there are times when they are not great at the beginning of mass, but they and my wife and I have the great opportunity, I'll put it that way, to make sure that they're able to make good choices throughout. That it's not just that they don't get donuts because they weren't good at the beginning, but maybe they're able to get a half a donut, to make good choices, to be able to say the Our Father, to be able to respond to the intercessions, to be able to stay sitting forward and kneel and say, my Lord and my God, when the consecration happens. Make sure that there are opportunities, there are some exit ramps from the worst day possible, just as we know that there are exit ramps from the best day possible. So this is a framework here that can be helpful for self-reflection. And it's actually something that is we implement in our advancement department here. And this will be familiar to some of the people here. And think, here's how we can think about the structure of our school or work day. And we talk about this with my staff every month. And it's some variations of this, but here's the way that you can think about it for yourself, or talk about it with your spouse, talk about it with a friend. Here are the 4 areas that we focus on. What do you do well? This is broad. This could be anything. What do you do well that makes you feel good about reinforcing the good elements of your life? And then also, what can you do better? We all know that there are things that we can do better. Again, we are not perfect individuals. And this has to come from a spirit of curiosity, not a spirit of judgment. We don't want to be condemning ourselves to something that makes us feel bad about ourselves, but thinking, interesting, what can I do better? Why am I not responding to those emails as quickly as possible? Why am I not grading my son's math homework? Why am I not responding to book clubs? So what can you do better? And then think of here in a school, what are you proud of this last semester or this last month or even this last week? You can think small. What is something that you are proud of? And then getting even more specific, what do you want to work on for the next month or so? Again, thinking forward, thinking, well, I've already talked about what I do well. I've already thought about what I can do better. And what is something that I want myself to work on or my family to work on for this next month or so? So what SMART goals are leading to in general is helping you fully participate, helping you have full participation in your lives. So what does full participation mean? Full participation means becoming whoever it is you need to become in order to accomplish whatever it is you are committed to. I think this is really, really important. It's how we fully participate in every element of our lives. Becoming whoever it is you need to become in order to accomplish whatever it is you are committed to. Now, of course, whatever you are committed to, it varies. It changes based on the circumstances of your daily life. You can set that. What are you committed to? If you're committed to a super clean house, as I think we all are to some degree, and it is more or less easily accomplished, but you can set goals towards that. You can become a person who accomplishes those things. Again, we're thinking of becoming. It's an act. It's not something that is just here, boom. Now you are it. It's about the process of growth, the process of becoming that individual who can accomplish the goals that you are committed to. Okay. And why are SMART goals necessary? Many of you know what you want to accomplish. So why haven't we done this? We're not all saints with halos glowing above our heads. We need to really, when we see our problems, when we see the issues that we have, the difficulties that we have, we need to bore down on the problem to see what's actually going on. And this is necessary because of the way that our brains work. And this is more of a human nature, a fallen nature thing, rather than the way they are designed to do. But here, our brains are ordered to survive, not thrive. Our brains are always deleting, distorting, generalizing things, making these assumptions. Our brains are ordered towards efficiency, not accuracy. It's those survival instincts, those survival needs. And here are their survival needs. They say, we want to look good. We want to feel good. We want to be right. We want to be in control. That's something as a parent that I strongly relate to. I would like to be in control when bedtime rolls around. And sometimes it does not feel that way. So that's why we're setting these goals, because of the way that our brains work with many things, with regards to the way that we approach our goals. And it's actually the case that sometimes we are confirming the survival instincts in our bad qualities. These are things that you might say to yourself, do I actually want to be right about that? Do I actually want to be somebody who is not that kind of person? It can be a bad things that we're right about in ourselves too. We say, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not an organized person. I'm not a patient person. I'm not a good writer. I'm not smart. As somebody who has taught students so long, they come to me and they say, well, I'm not a person who talks in class. I'm not a good writer. I'm not somebody who feels like the things that I think are worth hearing. And I say, you should be, because when we talk outside of class, you are smart. And I promise you, if you've got a question, somebody else in class has thought about that. Somebody else has that same question. It would be a great service to me as a teacher and to your fellow classmates to bring that up. It's funny because the entrepreneur thing is something that we always hear, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not like that person. But the entrepreneurial spirit is not exactly something that is just this indelible mark that you were born with, right? Many people, there are many stories. And even, I know that Laura didn't necessarily think that she would start off, have the school like MODG or write a book. It started off small and look what it has grown to. 6,700 students. Unbelievable. And these survival needs, these confirmation of the bad qualities, they are the jets for that lazy river that keep pushing us down and helping us just stay in that comfortable state of life. Pope Benedict, who says, like, we are not made for comfort, we are made for greatness. So how do we go past that? All right. So this is, I think, a really helpful graphic that that I find helpful in a lot of ways. We see how there's the truth up here. Hopefully you can see my mouse thing. The truth is up here, shining down. There's a broad spectrum here. And here in the middle, our bias, or the way that things occur to us, the occurrence, is blocking it. The way that it comes to us is as a perception, as an experience. And we see that it is only a very small section of the truth. Very small section of the truth. So here, when our brain is distorting, it's generalizing, it's making all these assumptions for us, we have to understand what is getting in the way. How are we accurately perceiving the situation so that we can make judgments properly? How are we getting in our own ways? So another element of this is the fact that hope is not a strategy. If we are just saying that we hope things, to be clear, this is not the theological virtue of hope. That is something different. This is more of the pie in the sky. Oh, I hope this will come true. I hope this person will listen to me. I hope that this is going to be good. It's not a strategy. And a strategy is the way that we get things done. Here's an example of this. So I'll try to use some defeated language. And maybe this is something that you've said to yourself as a parent before. I hope I'm able to prepare my children to succeed in the world and stay faithful to the church, ... The ellipses is always, I think, the universal designation for unfinished thought or not quite committed to the thing. And let's look at what the strategy element of that could be, what the flip side is. I will instill a love of the faith in my children by attending Mass 3 times a week, reading saint stories daily, praying the rosary or chaplet daily, and conversing about the faith regularly. That's a good place to start, right? That's not just a hope. That's a strategy. That's an actual setting up actions that you can take to set up your goals, to not just hope and think, well, I'm just going to cross my fingers and send my children off into the world to see that they are good, to see that they are holy. But I'm actually going to equip them with tools. Tools are a big thing in this. A strategy is a tool, right? Strategy is a way that you approach something. It's a way of problem solving. And you have to problem solve what your hopes and your desires are in order to see how you can accomplish them. Sorry, my thing keeps going off. But when you are setting up these goals, you have to understand the importance of environment. So here's another way of looking at habits. So important here in terms of our measurable SMART goals. Habits are simply reliable solutions to recurring problems in our environment. How amazing is that, right? Reliable solutions to recurring problems in our environment. I guarantee that for me, for my wife, for you, I don't know what your problems are, but I know that there are certain things that we are always talking about. We all have recurring problems in our environment. And we need to set up habits to have reliable solutions to these. So every single time we're not thinking, well, what do I do with this situation? Or how do we decide that we're going to handle a disobedient child who is throwing a fit in the grocery store? I'll just figure it out here. Reliable solutions. One way that I think about this, which is kind of a trite example, when you say, I see water bottles in culture. Dehydration is something that here in California, I used to struggle with a lot. And I think that in general, as a culture, we struggled with proper hydration. And it is kind of a more recent thing where everybody is carrying around a water bottle, it seems, especially among young people. I see that people even decorate their water bottles with fun stickers and whatnot. And that is something that is helpful. It's that positive peer pressure. I even have got a big water bottle right here. And I know that I have to drink 2 of these a day in order to maintain the proper level of hydration for myself. That's good. That's a habit of something that I fill it up right when I get to the office and then fill it up midway through the day. And that way I'm able to track and see where are my habits of filling it up in proper hydration to see how far I am progressing. Another element of this is kind of one space, one use. One space, one use. I used to always, when I was in college, study at a specific table in the Commons, which was the cafeteria at Thomas Aquinas College. And it was really helpful because I knew that when I was going there and setting up my books and leaving my room, I wasn't being distracted. I wasn't in a scenario in which I did other things, such as, chat with friends, although that would definitely happen too, or read another book, or be on my phone, priming myself by my environment being something that I specifically used for study. Other people, you could set it in a library. And this is something that I think is really impactful for us as a homeschooling program to think about too, because it is so easy for it to spill over into our regular life. We live in a small apartment. We don't have many other spaces where we can do school. And it's something that we have to actively work to overcome if our school table is exactly the same as where we eat our meals. That doesn't mean it's impossible, but in general, one space when use is a good thing. For a computer, if you are gaming on a computer and hopping over and even playing a quick game of solitaire, that can always be an off-ramp to that absolutely good day, an opportunity for a bad habit. And what we find, and what psychologists find a lot, is that the negative environment trumps the positive habit. So we have to, when setting up our habits, think about the environment that we as parents and our children are being in. Something that I think is so, so important. And another element of this is finding your identity, finding the identity of you as a person, as an individual, and also as your family. Identity is from the Latin essentitas. I don't know if the tenses are right, but and then identitum, so being and repeatedly. So literally what we're looking at is our identity. Our identity is our repeated beingness. Doesn't that sound like a habit? Repeated beingness. What we are, our habits are forming a very important element of us, which is virtue, simply speaking, according to the Aristotelian sense of it. And our language is really important in the way that we attack our identity. One example that I don't really relate to, but I've heard is really important, is if somebody offers you like a cigarette or something, there's two different ways of responding to that. Just to say no, even not even just yes or no, because the answer should always be no. But no thanks, I'm trying to quit, versus no thanks, I don't smoke. Those two things might seem very similar, but one is actually really empowering and set you up for success. No thanks, I don't smoke. I am not a person that smokes. My identity is not one of a smoker. Versus no thanks, I'm trying to quit, almost has that idea of self-defeated. I'm trying to quit. I'm not quite there yet. And when we address addiction, that is something that is incredibly relevant, because the words that you speak about yourself set you up for success or failure. I don't want to read this to talk about the importance of language. It's long, but bear with me. It's really good. This is from a blog, from a coaching practice that I really like. It's about leadership. A wise person once said, "Our words create our world," which is good news. That means if we want a different world to exist in our life and leadership that doesn't currently exist, we can actually shift our words and begin creating something new. Our language can begin to look like this. This is going to be hard becomes this is going to help me grow. This change will take forever becomes how long would I like that change to take? I don't have enough time becomes I will create the time to do what I am committed to. My family can never accomplish that becomes my family is able to grow into whatever we need to be in order to accomplish whatever we want to accomplish. I can't make that request. They'll probably say no becomes I am going to make a bold request, and whatever answer they give, I will make work for me. This conversation is going to be challenging and not go well becomes this conversation is going to be powerful for both of us and full of possibility to learn something new. As leaders, make your rightness count. Make your words work for you. I think both sides of the coin, you see the stark difference. And seeing the opportunity for growth and how much control we do have over these elements of our lives. So words we can make work for us, right? Words are tools. Again, the tools that we have here are things that we should be making to work for us. And I was doing some contemplation on words recently, and these are a couple of things that came to mind for me. Words are tools to grasp the present, to uncover the past, to forge a trail into the future. Think about that with every conversation that you have, that you're using tools to understand things, both current, present, and then also setting yourself up for success going forward into the future. That positive language, taking ownership of things by saying I rather than just saying you and talking about it in general, is important. Saying I get to do something as opposed to I have to do something is really important. And Christ is the Word made flesh. I don't think it's a coincidence at the beginning of John's gospel that he is talking about, like, he's the Word of God made flesh come down to us. How important are our words then? How important is the language that we use? And our language is not supposed to call us out, but calling us forward into something greater and bigger that our Lord has for us, that we are called to as sons and daughters of God. Challenge your perceptions, challenge the way that the world occurs to you, the way you are biased towards, to use that framework from before. St. John Paul II has a wonderful quote saying, Christians become who you are. I find very, very interesting. Saying that, what are we? We are sons and daughters of God. How do we become that? How do we live that out in our daily life? It's because it's something that we are. We just have to uncover it. We just have to be the paleontologists, the archaeologists that uncover it. So here's one strategy that I use. I don't want to rush through these things, but there's some examples at the end that I think are important too, that I hope will be helpful at least. But one element, because it can seem so broad and say, what am I supposed to focus on? I've got so many elements of my life. I don't even know where to begin. You can make a Venn diagram for yourself that will help you see, what are you committed to as an individual? What are the pieces of becoming that person? Nice thing about a Venn diagram is that it has to be 2, but it could be 3. And I think 3 or even more than that. But it's a really good way of looking at the aspects of getting goals and making your identity, right? Making what you are committed to. So here's an example, a sample for MODG as a school. This is nothing official, but this is something that we are committed to all these things. But here are 3 elements of our school that would make us successful. We would want to be a school where families love to be enrolled, where students succeed, and where people love to work. And that's us. That's us right there in the middle. That's us as a school. But that's good. That's great. How can that be better? How can we get more specific? So what we can say is, what are the elements of this? Let's look at the outcomes and the components of each of these things. We want to be a school where families love to be enrolled. That means that some of the elements of this are Catholicism is front and center. We have value in our school and our education in terms of monetary and what you receive, and you're given tons of support. We want to support our parents. We want to support our students. We also want to be a school where students succeed. Some elements of that are high academic standards. And also, as a Catholic school, them being solid in their faith. And then also for them being given support throughout their time in the school, in every element of their life, whether it be the faith side or the scholastic side or the career side, all those things. And then a place where people loves to work on the employee side, so we can attract good individuals to help bring a good education to our families. A workplace where skills are acquired, where input and collaboration are welcome, and where our employees feel connected to the mission of the school. So think, when you are setting up these goals, what are the elements of these things? Break it down and be able to solve the problem, to bring it into bite-sized chunks, if you will. Here's another one too. For myself, these are things that I'm committed to as Chris. I want to be a good father. I want to be healthy. I want to be a hard worker. And then I break down the elements of that. Being a good father. So many things are encapsulated in this, but this is just cursory. We have to start somewhere. Am I present to my children? Do I provide for my family? Am I an example of virtue? That's how holiness is kind of implicit in this. Especially even my relationship to my spouse is something to work on here. Healthy. Am I active in sports? And do I have a good diet? Do I have a good exercise routine? Do I have no unhealthy habits? And then being a hard worker. Do I go above and beyond expectations? Do I show reliability? Do I meet deadlines? Do I gain skills? And that's something that in reflecting upon these things, it's helped me to identify problems in my own life, identify problems in my own workday. I used to sit down at my desk, and being a knowledge worker, something that people talk about in books such as Deep Work. It's difficult to measure what your work is. When you're teaching, it's clear. And as I expand my job responsibilities, I'm not doing as much teaching as I used to. So it becomes, how do I move towards goals? I used to sit down on my computer and say, what am I doing now? Where did I leave off? And that led to me getting a schedule, actually. Being able to know what I'm doing with every hour of my day. Doesn't mean that I don't make mistakes and not be able to accomplish those things. Or if you're waiting for an email from me, I'm very sorry. I promise you it'll be get on my schedule. But it led to setting up a system to work against that. And so in general, what we're thinking about is that I'm not that person yet. I have some elements of that, but it's a matter of consistency. It's a matter of continually working towards that. Since you know that you're not that person yet, you have to love the gap. We think all the way back to those beginning slides that we had, where there was that lovely red puzzle piece connecting two things. You have to love that gap, thinking spirit of curiosity and not the spirit of judgment. Only God is perfect. We will never be perfect until we are in heaven. And God in his nature is pure actuality. It's a very philosophical term, but he actually is pure being. He cannot become. We as humans are always becoming. And so we have to love that gap. Otherwise, we'll just get bogged down and feel really poorly about ourselves, lose that motivation to actually change. So we have to look at ourselves. And there's a line from the Exultet that is sung at Easter Vigil. Oh, happy fault. It's talking about the fault of Adam, and that leads to Christ coming in the Eucharist, the sacrifice of Christ becoming man, God becoming man. The idea of that is from brokenness comes greatness. And I think this image here is incredibly insightful. It's I'm going to butcher this name, but it's the Japanese pottery technique of Kinzugi. I think that's right. I'm really bad at pronouncing non-English words, which is very bad. But what Kinzugi does is it treats breakage and repair as a part of the history of an object rather than something to disguise. They glue things together with gold to highlight the history of a product, of a vase, or in this case, a bowl. And so often in natural philosophy, there is the perfect being the enemy of the good. And that is a principle that so often stops in action. If you have children, or if you yourself are a perfectionist, you might never start something. You might never start a project because you want it to be perfect. And what the Japanese get so right is that, hey, even if you mess up, you still have an opportunity to grow and get back to being whole. And when you're thinking about this gap that you have, you want to think, who is a radically different me that I'm delighted to meet? A radically different me that I'm delighted to meet. Think about the other side of the tunnel. Okay, so in general, commitment and accountability are really, really important to you. You want to have an accountability partner. Speak the unspoken, commit to something that you know is good and true. Don't have the ambiguity in your commitments. And that's something that we as a school provide in a lot of ways with consultants, with learning support and teacher services teachers. And what you are providing as a parent, you're providing accountability to the commitments within your family. You want to help them in their commitments and then let them know that they are accountable to you. Not as kind of this hierarchical overlord, but saying, I want us to accomplish these things together. When I was in college, I had a good buddy that we would be workout partners. So we would set things up together. And we would immediately after we both got out of class, that would be the time that we work out. So we were very specific with regards to the time, with regards to the place. But what was even more important, because we had the time and the place, I will behavior in place at time. But we also held each other accountable because there were some days, rare to be sure, that we both wanted to work out. And other days too, rare to be sure, that we both didn't want to work out. But what was most common was that one or the other one of us did not want to exercise. We were tired after a day of classes. We were exhausted. We had to get started on study, but we held each other accountable. There was no ambiguity. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I kind of worked out, I walked back to the dorm. No. We had to go to the workout room and exercise. And that's something that you as parents have a great obligation and an awesome responsibility to be able to give to your students, and what our consultants are able to give to our families with regards to semester goals, yearly goals, 5-yearly. Many of our consultants stick with our families for a long period of time. They help them to commit to things and to be accountable to things, and you actually know them. So I want to give some examples here. So we'll go back to SMART, back to the puzzle pieces. So again, a quick reminder, and then we'll go into a few examples and hit some questions here at the end too. But with quick memory, SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time related. So here's example number 1. I feel overwhelmed. Between the normal day of schooling, coordinating activities outside the house, housework, meals, laundry, dishes, the list goes on. With only so many waking hours, how am I able to manage it all and do these things well? I'm sure that many of us can relate. I know that I can. But let's break up these areas too. It's go from things that are vague to specific. And again, don't trust the fact that you are not able to get it all done, but test it. See, what are the things that are at play here? You look at, okay, scheduling, the feel of overwhelm, so many different balls in the air. Trying to do all these things well is an element of it too. So let's see how we could address this SMART framework to the situation. We'll start with non-SMART solutions too, because sometimes that happens. We find through the opposite example something that is good. So you could just say, oh, well, I just need a better schedule. Time is an element here. I'll just need to be better at it. But that's not really helpful, because what is better? Kind of know in general what better is, but what is it? How will you know when you have a better schedule? Could you specify, for instance, better hours for school that are better or more helpful, at least? You could be intentional about what you're doing, prioritizing different things with your consultant's help, and consultants are always able to help you with these things. The MODG consultants are, or a mentor in your own community, or maybe your own parent. Put blinders on and work within certain hours of the school day, and then don't do work outside of them. Like you could put blinders on and say, well, I'm going to do math first, right at 8:30 or 9 in the morning, and then we'll work on those 3 things in the morning, and then we'll do science in the afternoon, because my son really loves science, and it won't be trying to get the hard things out of the way. People usually don't like math, which is the tough thing. So getting it out of the way early is sometimes a good thing. And when thinking about the other elements of this framework, of this complaint, is so many other things like cooking. Well, okay, when we've all been there, I know I've been there, in the time where it's 5:30 rolls around and you think, well, what am I going to eat? Fortunately, my wife does a lot of the planning of that now, but it can be difficult when you don't know and think, what do I have in the house? Do I need to run out? Do I need to have somebody stop on the way home? That's not necessarily a bad thing, but what this complaint is talking about, what this parent is talking about, is they feel the overwhelm. So maybe if you just plan for meals once a week, that's one less thing off your mind. You don't start thinking about dinner until 5. It's not in your mind at 3:30 and you think, well, do I have to run out to the store? Do I have time? Oh, well, then school will have to be sacrificed. It's another thing that we can, so these are some elements of kind of trying to winnow down, trying to bore in on how to solve this problem. But another element of I just need a better schedule that it's lacking is, well, when will we have this by? Remember the time related. When will we have it by? Specify a time to try to work out a schedule, and specify when you want to have it by. Is it before next school year, or is it by a certain month? Here we are at the end of October, so I really hope it's not the end of the school year, unless you are kind of condemning yourself to a year of more of the same. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you might need to wait till Christmas break or something. But also thinking, would saying I just need a better schedule, will this address all the aspects of your complaint? And I think our attitude is important with this. We might have to be okay with not getting everything done. I might have to be okay with not being able to answer every single email by the time I get out of the office. Here in a material world, all things can't be achieved at the same time. Laura talks about this a lot in the example of you can have a perfect green ball and a perfect red ball, but they can't be, the red ball can't be a green ball. The green ball can't be a red ball. They can't have every excellence in them because we live in a physical universe. We live in this material world. So our time is limited. Some things might have to suffer. If we want to eat well, maybe the laundry doesn't get done. If we want to have well-educated students, we might not be able to hit every single, to do every single sports practice. Something that we have to weigh and measure. So here's another not smart solution that's potential. I'll just make a super strict, inflexible schedule and stick with it every day. Again, think about the smart framework. Is this realistic? Do you think that you can do that? Is it attainable? Is it something that is within your power? Maybe your mother needs you to run an errand, or there's a medical emergency, or your husband needs you to come to a party, or even the coach needs you to come to an extra practice or set up something else that it would conflict with other inflexible schedulings that you have. Maybe you're able to do it, but then if you're able to do it, if it is attainable, if it is realistic, then is that what you want your homeschool day to be like? Do you want it to be bells and strict tardinesses and whatnot? There are certain benefits to that system, of course, but you have to think, is that what you want even? So here's a smart solution, a potential smart solution to this situation. By the end of November, we will start school by 9 a.m. I will talk to my spouse this weekend and make a list of what we do well in our homeschool and what we can improve on. I will smile at myself in the morning, at the mirror in the morning. I will say, I get to be home with my kids all day long. What a blessing this is. We will make a list of our activities as a family and discuss if we can do them all. So this hits the framework. It's specific. You're looking at a conversation with your spouse and a list that will come out of it. And looking at when you will start school. So measurable is the list too. And you will know when you start school by 9 a.m. or if you don't. Attainable. These are all things that you can do. A conversation with your spouse. I hope that happens regularly, but it should be something when it needs to happen that you can have a sit down and actually talk about the important things. And making sure that your children do sit down and do school by 9 in the morning. And you can't always smile at yourself in the morning, even if you don't think you can sometimes. It's realistic. 9 a.m. is not crazy. If you were saying maybe we'll get up at 6 in the morning and you have a whole bunch of people that are not morning people, you've got a bunch of night owls, maybe that's not the case. 9 a.m. seems reasonable, but that will, again, the specifics will apply to your own particular circumstance. And then time related. So by the end of November, you will have this. This weekend, we will have this conversation. And actually could get even more specific with this too. When will we make a list of our activities as a family and discuss it? If we're just saying when, if we're not saying when, that might not get done. So here, I can even improve on this too. Here's another example. Another school-related example. My daughter is always working on her papers last minute. Even when a teacher gives her a reasonable amount of time to complete an assignment, she still waits until the day before to really get started on it. I get so stressed about it, and I know she's not turning in her best work. We can definitely relate to that. So let's break down the pieces of this. So there's some procrastination here, right? And a feeling like you were not in control of your daughter's work. And also she seems to be not in control of actually getting the work done. It's always easier to do things than having a parent be nagging at you and say, well, get that done, get that done. But there's a lack of control, and seeing that something, you don't know what it is distracting her. What is that thing that is distracting? What is taking it away? What is stopping even you as the parent from making sure that this gets done, from overseeing it? And again, think back to that exercise example from back at the beginning, the idea that knowledge doesn't lead to action. The people that knew that exercise was good for them only hit the benchmarks for exercise 3% more. 3% of them hit the benchmarks more than just the control group. The knowledge doesn't lead to action. It has to have something specific to it. And also you're noticing, you're saying that the situation is unreasonable. You're saying there's a lack of reason in this and saying the teacher is giving my daughter a reasonable amount of time. She's not being reasonable. Now, maybe that's right. Maybe it's the case that it's not reasonable. But in a certain way, you're also talking about your own relationship to the problem, that you as a family don't appear to be reasonable in complying with the teacher's reasonable wishes. So something to just be aware of in this. So here's a couple potential non-smart solutions here. My daughter will sit down and write this paper as soon as she gets the email from the teacher. Okay, that's a solution that you could get. Is it realistic? What if the teacher sends it at night? Or maybe you get it and you check your email at 8:30 p.m. and it's a long paper, and maybe she hasn't even completed all the work with relation to the topic itself. Is it attainable? It kind of relies on when the teacher is going to be able to send you the information. And also, you as the parent are just kind of forcing something upon your daughter, and she should probably listen to you, but maybe she won't. Maybe it will lead to an adversarial relationship. And it's also not measurable, because who knows how long this will take? Who knows when you'll know when you have a finished paper or not, but there's all sorts of different papers. A 45-minute essay, maybe that's doable. But if it's a term paper or something that's a lot longer and requires more research, it might not work out. Here's another one. I'll just get her to have better habits and stop doing this. I can almost hear myself doing this. It's a very frustrated tone. I'll just make it better and have it stop happening. But as I can attest, it doesn't solve the problem. It pushes it off. It says, future me can solve this. That guy in the future, 2 weeks down the road, when the paper is due, he can fix this. It's not really specific. What are the better habits that I want my daughter to get? And it's not time related. When will she obtain those better habits? These are all elements that are coming out of a very kind of impassioned, well-meaning, but ultimately unfruitful solution to this problem. So here's an example number 2, the smart solution. On the day my daughter gets the paper topic, I will make sure she sits down and writes her thesis statement, what she thinks she immediately can prove in this paper. I will sit with her and have her do this for 5 minutes and no more. The next day, I will make sure she has finished all the reading related to the paper topic. The next day, I will have her write an outline. It should be at least 1 full page. Each day going forward, I will have her work on 1 section of the outline, of her outline. Then on the day before the paper is due, I will work with her on editing the paper and have her read it out loud to see how the writing sounds. This hits all the benchmarks. It's specific. You are being specific about each day what you're going to do. It's measurable. You'll know when you have a sentence. That is the thesis statement. You'll know when you have an outline. You'll know when she has done all the reading related to this. It's attainable, because even though, again, it's your daughter who is doing it outside of you, these are not insane things. Your daughter does want to do work, hopefully, and wants to be able to not have a parent nagging, a parent breathing down their neck to get something done. It's also realistic. It's very realistic to sit down and write for 5 minutes on the day you get the paper topic. Again, we talked about this before, but a gateway habit is 2 to 5 minutes. That's something that gets you going. It gets you started and going in the right direction and makes you feel like you can do something more than 5 minutes. You might realize, 5 minutes, that actually wasn't that long. Maybe I can work a little bit more. Say yes. Yeah. Take advantage of that if they can. It's also time related. It's saying, on this day, this happens. On this day, this happens. And going forward, there's a schedule. This will help with that problem. Now we'll come to our final example. And this is something that I can apply on the student side. If one of your children is concerned about this, it can also be on the parent side too. It's something that I know that many of us struggle with. But I'll read it and you can decide for yourselves. I feel like I don't have any friends. There aren't many people at church my age, and I don't feel like I would fit in with the ones that are my age. I don't know how to make new friends, and I think that's just the way it is. Thing that strikes me about this is that's just the way it is. It's like it's condemning yourself to something without even trying to fix it. And sometimes we may have had our students and our friends and even our children come to us and just feel defeated. That this is deflating, especially if we've struggled with this on our own side. It's something that is truly, truly hard. But let's see. Here are some non-smart solutions. I'll just toughen up and make new friends. Toughen up. I don't even know what that means really, but I think that it's something that people would say. But it clearly doesn't fit the framework, right? It's not specific. What exactly will you change to do this? It's not time related. When would that happen? When would you toughen up? Is it realistic? Even not knowing what tough is, it seems like that's pretty hard to meet that benchmark. Here's another one. I'll change to become someone who the other people will want to hang out with. First of all, do you want to do that? Do you want to change everything about yourself to fit another person's perceived benefits? Is it measurable? When will you know what that change is? Is it realistic? I don't know. Changing your whole self doesn't sound super realistic to me. Let's see a smart solution here. This is thinking about it from the student side, and hopefully you're able to adjust that as well. I will talk to my parents about this worry this week. I will do it right after I ask my mom to look over my math homework. I'll ask my parents if there are ways they think I can make friends. I will make a list of things I like about myself to affirm my good qualities and know what my identity is. I will join the circle of kids my age after Mass, even if I don't say anything. I will look into youth groups in my area this weekend and see if any fit my schedule. I will remember that my siblings are also my friends and work on those relationships. It hits all the benchmarks. You're talking about a conversation with your parents, which might seem super scary, but is specific. You'll know when you've had that conversation. It's attainable too. You can do it. Even just joining a circle of kids. It's not saying you're going to join the circle and you will tell a funny joke or juggle or do a backflip. Maybe you could do those things. I can't. But just joining it, saying I'm worthwhile as a person after making that list of things that are awesome about yourself, affirming your good qualities. Realistic. It's realistic to do these things too. Even part of the realistic that I love about this is talking to your parents right after you ask your mom to look over the math homework. So they're not saying something like, oh, what are you trying to put off? Are you sure that you don't just want to like make me feel bad for you? No. Priming the conversation to end in a good place. And also time related. It's related to all of these things. This weekend, right after I ask my mom to look at my math homework, this week I will do it. I'll even saying I will make this list. When will you make that list? Sit down right tonight. Might take no more than 5 minutes or 15 minutes. It hits that SMART framework. So this is a lot. We're almost done. And thank you guys for sticking with us as long as you have. But there's so much stuff and we can feel overwhelmed with how many things we might want to fix about ourselves, but we have to divide and conquer. And I talk about this with Laura Berquist frequently. So often we try to change ourselves during Lent. It's really important to just focus on one thing during Lent so you can actually fix that. Actually focus on one thing at a time. You don't want to take wild swings towards overcoming your gaps. If you are just a Sunday Mass person and you haven't been able to get to daily Mass in months, maybe just try one time a week and lead it on. Don't say I'm going to automatically become a third order Dominican next week. They probably wouldn't let you. I think there's a process for that. But don't take these wild swings. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. I think Mike Tyson said that. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. So setting up a system rather than a wild swing will help with that consistency. And also have small progress that is sustainable and reassuring. 21 days is pretty much the standard for starting a habit. I think that's really important to know that. I've had many students who say like, well, I did this all for a week. So why aren't I fixed? Why is this not better? You need to do it for longer. You need to have that 3 weeks where you go through a cycle. And then the expectations versus the reality. It's you might have a certain expectation for what you're going to be at the end of this, and it might not measure up to that, but it's really important. Coasting versus resting, I think just a way of looking at it. You might do the same things, but you want to actually be able to rest and relax. When you sit down at the end of the night, You don't want to feel like you are just coasting through and there's all sorts of things you haven't done, but you will actually rest better if you're accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish in a way that is productive. The most important thing, finally, is to just show up. Making sure that those habits happen. It's about you yourself showing up. Anything is better than no progress whatsoever. And that's really what I want to leave you with. But there's 2 more slides, so I'll read them anyways. This is an image that I think is really important. It's actually the background screen on my computer. The grass will always look greener on the other side until you start watering the side that you're on. I think it's been really impactful for me to think about how I relate to comparison shopping with other people and how I relate to setting goals for myself and being able to look at how can I improve the situation that I am in. And finally, the parachute that we have, Christ's mercy sets us free. It's such a parachute. We can act with complete confidence that he loves us no matter what we can do. And that is something that we have to work towards. Absolutely. We have to work towards holiness. We have to work towards that love of God. But it is that parachute, that backup parachute that allows us to act with confidence and bravely pursue what his love has set us up for. And that's all that I've got. I'm amazed that you guys stuck around. I'm going to stop sharing real fast.
That was amazing. Every time I've only heard it twice, I guess this is the second time, but every time I always get something new. And that quote by Pope St. John Paul II, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but something about
not made for comfort.
Well, that's the Benedict one.
Okay.
And then Christians become who you are.
Yeah, become who you are. That just, especially in light of all of the crazy things going on in the world right now with gender identity and just like identity in general. People find their identity so many other places, but you look for it in God. That's just such a beautiful point.
I love it. The reason he's a saint.
Okay, so we do have a couple questions. We don't have a lot of time left, but let's see. So Christy is saying she's wanting to focus on measurable and what happens when you fail to evaluate what is measurable. You give yourself check marks along the way, like you think that you're accomplishing something, but then you actually fail to evaluate and reward in the end. So then you just are left with a feeling of defeat, like you haven't done anything. So what do you suggest to help with that daunting problem? That's
really good. I could totally relate to, and I do relate to feeling foggy and defeated and ensure that progress has been made. And I think that having somebody outside of yourself evaluate what is measurable is a really good thing. It goes to that accountability, I think. I might think, and even I was dealing with this with a coworker who or a person that I had worked with in the past about a project. And I said, hey, I thought I was setting up a really good framework for what is measurable. I said, hey, for a project, I'll brainstorm for an hour tomorrow. And he jumped back with, he's very good at this. He said, okay, well, let's talk about what that hour is going to be like. Are you going to be writing notes? Are you going to be setting goals for yourself? Are you going to be writing questions? I can't even remember exactly what he said, but a lot of them popped in my mind. I wasn't even thinking that. I just thought brainstorming, and I thought that would be measurable, and it actually wasn't that measurable. So I thought about that going into my brainstorming session. I ended up with about 1.5 pages of notes, and I would have maybe just sat there, and I don't know how much I would have gotten done. So what I quickly jumped to, an hour of brainstorming, measurable. And in terms of time, it is. And I knew the time that I was going to do it. But with what I was actually looking to come out for at the end, that was something that I did not accurately represent to myself. And that sounds like what Christy is saying too. It sounds like Christy, you're not accurately representing to yourself what measurable things could be. So talking about it to a friend, whether it's or a consultant, that's what our consultants are there for. Because what we're setting up within our school is something that sometimes regularly is found in the homeschooling world in terms of having mentors and having a community of people that are there for you. But sometimes it isn't quite that formal. We make it formal. We make it guaranteed that you have that person to turn to. It's not like you have to find that person or you think that you're bothering them. That's their job,
What they're there for.
but their vocation. It's a ministry, an apostolate. They want to do that.
Right.
So I hope that helps Christy.
That actually leads to her second question, because she also asked about spouses meeting together. She said, what do you recommend, or do you recommend spouses meet together regularly to assess family progress and set common goals? And what does that realistically look like? And you mentioned this a little bit in your talk.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear more.
It's so important because, hey, as spouses, we are partners in our family. And so often and I see I'm using the language of like off in the distance. I'll say it. So often I think, oh, well, my wife will handle this, or I handle this part of the family, and so she will handle these other things. So it's making the assumptions, and my brain is generalizing, saying like, well, okay, well, I'm the head of the household in these regards, but she's the head of the household in these other regards. So it's so important, and so important to, I think, be structured about it too. And one of the things that we were seeing throughout a lot of these examples was that it can be really easy to just set up a situation for a conversation, but making that conversation fruitful is another thing. Maybe you can make sure that you prepare something beforehand, and that framework of what are you happy about from this last month, or what do you think you do well, or what do you think you can improve on? Those are 4 really simple questions that at least I have found when evaluating myself and our staff evaluating each other. It's led to some questions that we might not have otherwise come to, some realizations that we might not have otherwise come to, even though you can feel kind of boring answering them maybe time after time after time. But you're forcing yourself to dig deep. You're forcing yourself to not just stay on the surface and say, well, what's on your mind? And what else? And what else? So often, if I just ask one question, you'll say whatever just pops into your mind. But if you ask, well, and anything else? Yeah, you might scramble and think, well, what else? And then something else pops into mind. You want to be able to dig deep with your spouse. So, okay, here I am, as I was mentioning earlier, only 5 years of marriage. Maybe not only, but 5 years of marriage. I can say what's worked for us and our family, and things that we should do more but do sometimes too. But having a date night, even if it's just once a month or once a week, a dedicated time where you can spend time with your spouse, that is not just well, we're sitting and tempted to watch TV because the house is a wreck and we just finished cleaning up all the toys on the floor, but knowing that it's there, and that you and your spouse are on the same page about talking about these things, and it requires buy-in. It does require buy-in.
That would be my question.
Yeah.
How do you get the buy-in from the other spouse?
That's hard. And I think it's really hard because that also requires effort. Being able to accurately present the situation to you. If you are able to accurately say, this is the way that your actions are affecting me, or the actions of the children are affecting me, that might help, I think. Again, the buy-in does require health to it.
Well, and I think something that you said too at one point was, I forget exactly what the example was, but you said something very positive. And having something positive to say before you bring a negative into it, I think is also really helpful in discussion. Saying like, you do this thing really well, and I really appreciate that, but also this other thing, it also motivates you to get more of that affirmation.
It can't just be all that. Like it's tough because even with practicing it for a long period of time, the spirit of curiosity often feels like I'm judging myself, or I feel like it is a judgment.
And similarly with other people.
Similarly with other people.
Yeah.
If I'm just coming, and that's why I think it's good to come from yourself. And this is, I was hearing a friend talk about how he was called out by a priest one time for being in the confessional and just talking about the sins of his spouse, the sins of his wife.
Yes.
And the priest just said, knock it off. Like, you're here for your own sins, not those. And of course it seems obvious, right? It seems like, of course you shouldn't be doing that when you say it, but we fall into that, and I fall into that. And so having it come, and if you need to have that kind of a tough conversation, maybe frame it as that. Ask for permission. Say, Veronica, can I be really honest with you right now? I hope that you say yes. I hope that we could talk about it. But if you're saying, I don't know, I'm not quite feeling it, be like, that's fine. That's great. Know that I want to have a conversation that I think will be really productive for the both of us. But let me know when you're ready for it, because I think that it will be good. And that way, you know that I'm not like harping on you and saying, oh, okay, whoa, well, yes, there's this thing that I'm not going to tell you that you need to do a better job of. And similarly with our spouses, there might be things that we need to tell each other. But it's not necessarily, you have to set up the time for it. And now I'm just droning and going back on. So I hope that there's another good question. And I would be very interested in, Laura, your perspective on setting up time for those types of conversations too.
Yeah.
Or your parents, even 71 years.
I know, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yes. I think what you said, Veronica, is really important about, you have to approach it positively. If you go into any such conversation with just negative approach, it's not going to go anywhere, and you're not going to get buy-in, and you do need buy-in. But in my own experience, speaking as a wife, I would approach it by saying, you know what? Husband is head of the household. The wife is the deliberative element. I have something I need to deliberate about, but I need your help in coming to judgment, because that's how we work. We're a community, and we work together. So, there are a lot of things I know the answer, but I've got something on my mind I don't, and I need help. So can we set up a time to talk about this thing that concerns, our family? And I just need your help. I found that worked pretty well.
Yeah. It's hard to see how it wouldn't.
But it builds up the ego a little bit, in a good way, in a positive way, right? And that shows that you value that person's opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. And 100%. It's the truth, right?
Yes.
Huge. Makes a big difference.
Yeah.
That does lead us to, I know we should end soon, but that does kind of lead us into the last question. This is from an anonymous attendee, but they say, thank you for your perspective. So helpful. I liked that part about the future me having a lot on her plate. How can I, as the 10% who has consistently failed at SMART goals, regain confidence? Past me has a poor track record.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Good.
And that's, I think it's probably, I would say it's probably more than 10%. It's probably many people, 99% who have failed at those things. So there's a couple of things that I think are interested about that, because here you're saying you're almost condemning yourself to be past me. The poor track record. What does track make you think of? It's, for a racetrack, it's a loop. It's going around and around and around, and sets the trail into the future almost. You know what you're going to do because you look at the past, you see that track record is very well established. So how does future me break out of that? And it seems like as you're struggling with confidence, as you want to regain that confidence, we think about that image. I'll send the slides out too for people so that they're able to look at this too, but challenge that. You might think, wow, my past self, I failed in a lot of ways. Maybe it's right with some things, but I can almost guarantee you that it's not right in all the ways that you think.
I agree.
That you accomplished so much more than you think. Even with certain conversations that I've had lately, people have come to me and say, this is so awesome that what the school does. And it caused me to think. I try to write down some reflections every night, and it caused me to write down, don't underestimate your normal. And your normal are things that you take for granted all the time. Yet somebody else viewing it from the outside is able to say, no, this is pretty awesome. Look at all the things that you do, which can help you regain that confidence. So have your spouse talk about you in that way, in a spirit of building up, and not in a spirit of nagging or trying to look at what to fix. But also think about it in terms of, it could be a friend too, it could be a parent. But if you're looking at SMART goals that you've failed at, set something small to have success, so that maybe you can show up. A lot of the times the failures come, and this is something that a lot of the times when you're dealing with people that are struggling to break out of a mindset that is stopping them from success, the issue is setting too small of goals and not blowing the roof off of it and seeing how far you can go. But many times we are holy people, smart people who are trying to do good things. We might say, I want to write a book, or I want to clean my house from top to bottom. And then that just ends up being too much of a big swing. So if you're looking at, well, we talk about this with how to help people do math problems all the time. If you struggle with math, have them work for 15 minutes and see how long they can how many problems they can get down. Or if your house is a mess, start off and clean all the dishes in the dish.
And let that be the goal.
Let that be the goal. You might get kickstarted and get motivated, but at the very least, you're getting up and doing something. So set a small goal, and even say, like, set a goal of, I don't want to have any dishes in the sink at the end of the day. If you set up a system for that, where while your wife is reading a bedtime story, you're doing the dishes and cleaning it up, that will help you gain the confidence and the habit, so that you no longer even think about that going forward. The more habits you have, the easier it gets to do other things that you don't have habits for, because there's less on your mind.
Right.
Do you agree with that, Laura?
I sure do. I think that's absolutely right. That book you mentioned, Atomic Habits, one of the points he makes, start small, be consistent. And it's amazing. Small things done consistently over time can yield great results.
Yeah, I think that earlier in your talk, you also said, when you're thinking about something, make sure you're very specific with your language. And that if you tell yourself, I'm going to try to do this, it's different than saying, I will do this. And not letting your past issues and failures actually affect
get in
what
the
your
way.
perception is.
It's the I'm trying to quit versus I don't smoke.
I don't smoke.
I didn't use that example with the students, and it was something about eating healthy and chips. It didn't hit as hard, because I think the nature of addiction is really important here. We can be addicted to failure. I don't know if that's exactly the right way of doing it, but if we're confirming ourselves those bad qualities, then
absolutely, Chris.
You're not pushing yourself, and you don't think you can. The confidence is something that, again, Christ is giving us talents for a reason. We might have to look to try to find them, because we might be lying to ourselves about ourselves. I'm not a person who accomplishes SMART goals. I'm not efficient.
I do want to say, because I think it's a good place to end, is that prayer is really important. You want to change, you have to pray. We can't rely on ourselves. We have to rely on God. And he's set up the supernatural order to help us. We need to take advantage of it.
100%. Adoration is so good.
Adoration is so good.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. And thank you, Laura. And thank you, everyone else, for coming, and all of your questions and comments. And I know everyone got much information and knowledge.
Good.
Like good language.
Changing the language, first thing, right? All right. Well, everyone, have a good night. God bless. And then our next webinar will be in January. So we're going to have Thanksgiving and Christmas in between, breaks for those. But Laura will be giving our next webinar, and it'll be on prayer with the saints. So look forward to that. Not marker calendars. We don't know the date. I don't know the date.
Yeah, the date is
But
somewhere.
look forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, God bless and good night.
All right. God bless you all. Thanks so
God
much.
bless.